Yeah, I had, when we had the old laptops, they complained about them being so slow. And so I said, hey, you think those are slow? You know, I think I showed you this already, right? This is how the old computers used to, you have to, every line had to be bubbled in instead of typing them in. So, yeah, don't complain. Okay, so lesson 2, actually, I think it's lesson 3 if I'm not mistaken, right? I've made a few changes to my notes. I think it's lesson 3. Conditional statements. You need ifs. You've probably figured out by now with Scratch that you needed ifs, okay? So let me show you how if works in Liberty. It means exactly the same thing, right? So statement if simply means the same thing as in English. It's just like in Scratch. If x equals 5, then do something, okay? In Scratch, we didn't have the then. In Liberty, you need the word then. So when might an if be used? Here's an example, a non-gaming example. GST tax that you guys know about when you go and buy something is a tax that's charged on both parts and labor. For example, a repairman fixes a dryer with a new motor. GST is charged on the new motor and the labor to put it in. PST, provincial sales tax, is a tax that is only charged on items, not labor. So there would be no PST on the labor, only the motor. So you have an if. If it has to be charged, then calculate. So in the previous tax problem, both the GST and PST was charged. Sometimes PST is not charged. GST is on goods and services. PST is only on goods. So design a code that will ask if PST is to be charged, and then calculate the total price, including taxes. Remember that PST is 7%, GST is 5%. So here's the sample run. Here's what it should look like for you. Amount of tax to be charged on, like how much is the cost? $10. Is PST to be charged? 1 means yes, 2 means no. Okay, the total amount including taxes then is $11.20. Because we answered 1, that means that there is PST to be charged. In other words, there's both taxes, right? If you said no, if you answered with a 2 for no, then the total amount including taxes would be $10.50. Okay, this is how stores work, right? If you go and you buy something, rather, you're going to pay PST and GST. But if you go and pay a plumber, then you're not paying PST. Okay, so here would be the pseudocode. Here would be the plan. Get the amount, calculate the GST amount because you have to pay GST. Determine if PST is to be charged using an if. If yes, calculate the PST amount, remembering that it's 7, and then calculate the final amount, and that is equal to the amount plus the PST plus the GST. Their PST could be equal to 0 though, right? And then you display it. So that's what you have to do. Those are the steps. Then you just have to go and code it. Okay? Now the syntax for an if statement looks like this, okay? In Scratch, it was this block right here. It was if, and then you had that little hexagon thing in there, right? And notice how you've got this sort of bracket thing in here. That means that anything that, if this is true, then do everything inside the bracket, right? Well, it's tough to do that in Liberty. There's no bracket kind of thing. So what we do is we create it by using tabs, okay? So you line up your if and your end if. Scratch ends the if with this thing down here. We end with an end if in Liberty. So the general statement is if something, 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 then do something if it's true, and you have to end it with an end if. For every if, there must be an end if. Think of them as bookends. Okay? There has to be a start, there has to be a finish. Or when you're doing brackets, right? Like if you're doing brackets in a mathematical thing, for every left bracket, there has to be a right bracket. Same idea. For every if, there must be a end if. So here's an example. If PST is equal to 1, then PST tax is equal to the amount times 0.07. That, of course, is 7%. Okay? So it's just an if. It's nothing complicated. The tax thing might be complicated. You might not get that, but it's just a plain old if, just like it was in Scratch.
What is HST?
HST is harmonized. That's where they take the PST and the GST and they put it together. So here's the tax program. So I would like you to type it in. take a few minutes and just type that in. See how it works.
So I get type of documents, it types it,
So what we've got here is you've got an input, amount tax to be charged on. We're going to call that amount. That's our variable. The GST tax is equal to the amount times 0.05. We ask input, is the PST to be charged? The answer is either 1 for yes or 2 for no. We're going to call that PST. It's either 1 or 2, the PST. And then we're going to say if PST is equal to 1, then PST tax equals amount times 0.07. Okay? You have to include the word then. You didn't have to do that in Scratch. You have to tab over, and you have to end if. Okay? So I just wanted to show you what it would look like in a regular program.
So the one we typed in wasn't supposed to work?
It should work.
Wow, wrong eye, it didn't work.
Okay, so
Are we supposed to see these kind of things?
you can. That's just a little sample thing. Okay? So suppose you're writing a blackjack program, which you will be doing in the near future. Okay, you're going to be writing a game called blackjack. Of course, that's 21. The rule is that if your total is over 21, you bust and you lose, right? So it would probably look like something like this. If player total is greater than 21, then print you bust, sorry you lose, bankroll equals bankroll minus bet, and if. Notice that you can have more than one statement inside an if. You can have multiple statements inside an if. In fact, you can also have another if inside an if, a nested if. Okay?
Would it be working with blanks soon?
Possibly. In Scratch, it would look something like this. You'd set your bet to -1 times the bet. Sorry, set minus bet to -1 times the bet. If player total is greater than 21, then say you bust, change the bankroll by minus bet. Okay, so that would be the same thing as this. We've used an if here as well. Okay, notice the indentation. Okay, there will be marks for indentation. If you don't have things indented properly, you're going to lose marks. It is important. It doesn't change how the program runs, but it's a whole lot harder to read when you don't have any indentation at all. Okay? The if and the end if should be lining up. They should be at the same level. Okay? All right. So, if we go back to our in-between project, right? In the in-between game, remember we get our bet, we have to check to see if it's greater than the bankroll, right? You pick the third card and print it, and if it's in between, we print that you win and add a bet to the bank, and if it's outside those values, then you print that you lose and you subtract the bet, and if it's a match, then you print lose and subtract double. So what I would like you to do is I would like you to open up your project from yesterday, your in-between version 1, and add the code to get the bet from the user and use an input, and then write an if statement to ensure that the bet is less than the bankroll. Okay, write an if statement to ensure that the bet is less than the bankroll, and then I want you to save that as in between version 2. Here's what I put. Here's my instructions. Print welcome to in between. My little attempt at some graphics here. Here's my instructions. Here's my ante. Ante is equal to bankroll times 0.01. Prints the ante, and then I've got input. Enter your bet. If bet is bigger than bankroll, print bet is too big, try again. That would be how the if statement works, right? Input, enter your bet. If the bet is greater than the bankroll, print bet is too big, try again. Make sure you have your end if. What happens if you don't have an end if? Well, it'll give you an error, and it says right at the bottom left-hand corner, it says expecting end if, I think, doesn't it?
Something.
Something like that, right?